Hi, my name is Charlotte, and the subject that I teach is AP English Literature. My experience with this subject stems from a very deep passion for English and literature that started at a very young age and my own experience with taking the AP Literature class in high school. I have taught AP English Literature as part of the tutoring center in high school and other AP and non-AP humanities and English classes, such as AP English Language, AP Comparative Government, AP Environmental Science, and AP Psychology. Additionally, I've also tutored my younger siblings for a few years now, specifically my younger sister in general math, science, and English, and my younger brother in AP World History. This fall, I will be attending Dartmouth College, majoring in international relations with a focus in public policy and a minor in dance. As a result, another subject I am extremely passionate about and have experience in teaching is government. Besides teaching, I've pursued this interest by being a youth advocate for multiple NGOs, court-martialing for a high court judge, and participating in the political scene by being an intern for a prominent Hong Kong political party. Therefore, I have an understanding of government and politics that goes beyond textbook definitions, which greatly benefits me when I'm helping others in understanding the complexities that come with government. Outside academics, I love performing and I'm an avid figure skater and dancer, and have been on the Hong Kong national figure skating team since age 12. So now I will be teaching a short introductory lesson on basic literary analyses using a comparison of two very famous poems. The first one is called The Passionate Shepherd to His Love, second one called The Nymph's Reply to the Shepherd, written by Christopher Marlowe and Sir Walter Raleigh, respectively. So firstly, when analyzing literature, a useful acronym to follow is TPCAST. These stand for title, paraphrase, connotation, attitude, setting, tone, and theme. As you annotate a piece of literature, keeping in mind these 7 tenets will help you in spotting what's significant in the passage, stanza, or line. As you annotate, ask questions, draw connections, highlight something you don't understand. Essentially, make note of what jumps out to you. Next, before reading any piece of literature, it is important to take note of the background of the piece. That is, author and time period of each piece to put it into context. Here, Christopher Marlowe's The Passionate Shepherd to His Love was written in the late 1500s, while Sir Walter Raleigh's The Nymph's Reply to the Shepherd was written in 1601. The time period in which these were written focused heavily on pastoral poetry. Poetry focused on perfect romantic scenes. Now that we know this, it helps put these two poems into context. Finally, when analyzing poetry like we are doing today, I recommend reading a poem at least 3 times before doing any sort of summarizing analysis. First, read the poem without annotating, if possible, aloud. Then go over it twice while annotating these next 2 times. This will help build understanding of the poem or poems in a deeper manner. Now, I will be reading The Passionate Shepherd to His Love aloud. The Passionate Shepherd to His Love by Christopher Marlowe. Come live with me and be my love, and we will all the pleasures prove that valleys, groves, hills, and fields, woods, or steepy mountain fields. And we will sit upon the rocks, seeing the shepherds feed their flocks, by shallow rivers to whose falls melodious springs sing madrigals. And I will make thee beds of roses, and 1,000 fragrant posies, a cap of flowers and a kirtle, embroidered all with leaves of myrtle. A gown made of the finest wool, which from our pretty lambs we pull, fair-lined slippers for the cold, with buckles of the purest gold. A belt of straw and ivy buds, with coral clasps and amber studs. And if these pleasures may thee move, come live with me and be my love. The shepherd swains shall dance and sing for thy delight each May morning. If these delights thy mind may move, then live with me and be my love. Now that I've read this aloud, here are a few annotations that I have made to the poem. Notice that in these annotations, I have not only highlighted what jumped out to me, but drawn connections to the possible greater message that the author might be trying to convey. So on the side here, I've used the comment feature to highlight what jumped out at me when I was reading the poem initially. You can see here that I took note of the title, like it said in TPcast, as well as something that jumped out of me, the alliteration and what that could have implied. So for me, I saw that as, oh, it adds to the sing-song rhythm that is common to pastoral poetry. Some other annotations that kind of go with different aspects of TPcast. Here, I'm trying to draw conclusions. What could the use of all these beautiful spring images mean for the poem, and so on and so forth. Let's now do the same for the nymph's reply to the shepherd. The nymph's reply to the shepherd by Sir Walter Raleigh. If all the world and love were young, and truth in every shepherd's tongue, these pretty pleasures might me move to live with thee and be thy love. Time drives the flocks from field to fold, when rivers rage and rocks grow cold, and Philomel becometh dumb, the rest complains of cares to come. The flowers do fade, and wanton fields to wayward winter reckoning yields. A honey tongue, a heart of gall, is fancy's spring, but sorrow's fall. Thy gowns, thy shoes, thy beds of roses, thy cap, thy kirtle, and thy posies, soon break, soon wither, soon forgotten, in folly ripe, in reason rotten. Thy belt of straw and ivy buds, the coral clasps and amber studs, all these in me no means can move to come to thee and be thy love. But could youth last and love still breed, had joys no date, nor age no need, then these delights my man may move to live with thee and be thy love. Similarly, here are some more annotations. You can see on the sides, I've once again used the comment feature, and I'm also commenting on multiple aspects of TPcast on this poem as well. So one thing that I had a question about when I read this poem, for example, was how did and why did the author of the poem choose to use a nymph to portray the woman that Christopher Marlowe is describing in his first poem? Here. Another thing that I think was confusing, or maybe that I had a question about initially when reading the two poems, is how can you tell that these poems are interconnected? And well, you can tell by similar language, and that's common of many call and response poems that were written back in the day. For example, they use exact language from the previous poem: thy gowns, thy shoes, thy beds of roses, thy cap, thy kirtle, and thy posies. And another key phrase is to come to thee and be thy love, in response to, Christopher Marlowe's calling for this nymph to be his lover. Now that we have read and annotated both poems, here are some conclusions that I have drawn based on the comparison of the poems. It is also extremely important to note that although we are aware of TPcast, the analysis doesn't necessarily have to feature every single part. It is simply a guide for the initial annotation. So, The Passionate Shepherd to His Love is a pastoral poem that details a shepherd's request for his beloved to come live with him and be his love, expressing love in an idyllic, perfect world with an affectionate tone, while hiding his true intentions behind his flowery words. What I did there is I used evidence from the poem to back up my statement. Come live with him and be his love, which is expressing the love in an idyllic, perfect world, as well as address the tone, affectionate. However, the nymph's reply to the shepherd, written in 1601 as an anti-pastoral response to Marlowe, ultimately through the nymph, rejects the shepherd's proposal, not only criticizing the shepherd's promises and intentions, but the idealization of the countryside and pastoral poetry itself. And I will now go on to explain my reasoning with detailed evidence from both poems. So in The Passionate Shepherd to His Lover, a shepherd showers promises of fantasy upon the object of his affections, who Raleigh, as I mentioned earlier, has interpreted to be a nymph. Marlowe paints a picture of a seemingly eternal spring, describing the countryside with images such as melodious birds singing madrigals, and beds of roses with fragrant posies, a cap of flowers, and a kirtle, again using evidence to back up my claim. As the poem progresses, his claims of what he will shower upon his lover begins to get even more extravagant, including gowns made of the finest wool, and fair-lined slippers with buckles of the purest gold. However, for all the beautiful scenery and grandiose and often ephemeral, the idea that something doesn't last forever, such as flowers, these gifts, Marlowe's shepherd fails to elaborate on why he loves this maiden, instead merely trying to persuade her into being with him through material gains. He fails to mention the cold, harsh winters or the hard work of the shepherds, in fact implying that the other shepherds are only there to dance and sing for her delight. As a result, Marlowe's words suggest that the shepherd is not asking for love itself, but for a lover. This is only further highlighted by his concluding statements that if and only if these delights her mind may move, should she then live with him and be his love, underscoring that the maiden should only be with him if she is moved by these fantasies and gifts and not by the seemingly suspicious, non-existent declaration of love in a love poem. Now, on the other hand, and this is where the comparison comes into play, the nymph's reply to the shepherd begins immediately, as we see here, by shutting down the shepherd's request using a conditional statement, the word if, to imply that the fantastical idyllic world painted by the shepherd for the nymph can only exist if all the world and love were young, which is not the case, and criticizing the premise of pastoral poetry. In the real world, he explains, Raleigh says that flowers do fade, and thy gowns, thy shoes, thy beds of roses, thy cap, thy kirtle, and thy posies soon break, soon wither, soon forgotten. Essentially saying that these images, though beautiful, they don't last forever. Now, to recap this really short lesson, when analyzing literature, keep in mind TP cast. Then make sure to look at the big picture and take into account the context of the piece. Finally, with poems, if possible, read them each at least 3 times before conducting any further analysis. Now to recap this really brief lesson, first, when analyzing literature, keep in mind TP cast. Then you should make sure to look at the big picture and take into account the context of each piece. And finally, with poems, if possible, make sure to read them aloud and read the poem at least 3 times before conducting any further analysis. So thank you so much again for listening to my introduction, and I hope you found my mini lesson useful in some capacity as well. The basics of analyzing literature are useful for anyone in any profession with any interests. So even if you aren't particularly interested in English literature, I hope that you gained some new insight into something that may very well help you in the future. Thanks again.